Congressman, thank you very much. We know that the Senate and the House have already passed several bills to address joblessness here in the United States. But what is the specific need then for the Jobs for America Act?
Well, the Jobs for America Act and the Local Jobs for America Act, a piece of legislation that'll start direct public jobs, direct government job creation, WPA style, CCC style. These are jobs that people could get back to, and we could really have 1 million jobs in a very short period of time. And also, this is to address the service shortfall that so many local governments are experiencing all over the country. Cities are having to lay off police officers, firefighters, public works people, people who work in Head Start, people who fill in the potholes and make sure that our roads are safe and are in good repair, all being laid off because the fact is that the local governments are having their support cut, their taxable base is shrinking. So this is an attempt by the federal government to put people back to work in public jobs that need to be done.
And who are the people who are most likely to benefit from this particular legislation? You said it will restore services on the local level, but who are the key beneficiaries here?
Well, a lot of young people will get jobs. Unemployment is about 25% among the youth. People of color will get jobs. People in rural areas will benefit. People who are people who've been laid off for an extensive period of time will benefit. And this is to go in public. People who have public jobs already will be able to stave off layoffs. So if you work for the city and it's your job to be a teacher or a person who is a police officer, your likelihood of being laid off will drop significantly because the federal government will be able to help and offer that support. So public workers, youth, people who are in the high concentration areas, all will be able to benefit directly from this bill.
Now, there is a
It's
bit of. I'm sorry, go ahead.
75 billion over the course of 2 years for 1 million jobs.
There is some concern that's been ginnied up, and one of the efforts that I'm sure you'll get from the right is that if we're, regardless of the merits of this bill, we shouldn't do it unless it's paid for in some way. Um, Tackle that issue. How are you going to approach that argument?
Well, of course it has to be paid for. But the fact is that in a recession situation like this, deficit spending, at least in this year, is something that is wise economic policy. The fact is it will be paid for. It may not be immediately paid for, but it will be paid for. But here's something that's important to bear in mind. As some people say, well, we're boosting up the deficit and our children are going to have to pay for this. Aren't our children also going to have to pay for increased class sizes, fewer teachers, poor facilities to learn in, lesser number of textbooks, having to bunch a bunch of kids into the same classroom? Aren't our children going to suffer because of that refusal to invest in our education? What about our public safety today? Should should we not invest in public safety by having enough officers in order to protect our community? What about burning down our infrastructure today? The fact is, if it burns down today because we have to cut the fire department, we won't have that building tomorrow. So these things, this is an argument that I think is important. We do have to pay. We have to live within our means, but in a recession, that payment should not have to be necessarily this year. But let me just also tell you, I do like the idea of a paid for because, if it allows us to examine waste, fraud, and abuse in our defense budget. The fact is, there are a lot of generals who say that there's a lot of things online, military weaponry, that they don't even want, but
Hmm.
cost millions and millions of dollars. Today in the United States and Russia just announced a missile reduction program. Maybe we can find savings there. As we begin to wind down out of Iraq and Afghanistan, we could find savings there. As we're seeing money return from the banks that we, the American people, lended to them in the Troubled Asset Recovery Program, we can find monies there. So we shouldn't allow ourselves to be hamstrung by this issue of pay for it. If we need to, it is a good idea to borrow during a recession in order to make sure that we stimulate demand and have people working. But still, there are ways to pay for this bill, and I think we should explore all those ideas.
Can't you also make the argument that it is better to actually pay people to work than to pay people through unemployment benefits and so on to not work?
That's probably the best argument. I probably should have said that first. The fact is, if people would rather work, and we're going to have to pay it in terms of unemployment benefits or some other support or COBRA support, why not pay folks to work? I think that's probably the best argument.
So, how do progressive activists, particularly over the next 2 weeks as you're trying to get co sponsors for this bill, how do we get momentum for getting this legislation through the House?
Well, what we need to do is go to our progressive base, our grassroots base, tell folks that, look, the best thing you can do to move this job bill forward is to call your congressperson and write your senator and tell them they need to be on the Local Jobs for America Act, and they need to do it now. I'm on the floor of the House trolling for bill sponsors. We've got above 80 already, and we're trying to get more and more and more every day. So, perhaps we can get as many as 216 bill authors. That pretty much makes it a slam dunk to pass the bill.
All right. Well, I wish you good luck on that.
Thank you very much, Isaiah.
All right. Thank you.